In this video, I want to introduce you to a few different photography genres or types or areas of photography, and along with that, a handful of photographers. And I really do mean a handful. I'm going to do my best to go through this quickly. I love to talk about photography and photographers, but I just want to give you just a little taste of the incredible diversity and range of what photography can be. So I'm going to go ahead and start out here with documentary photography. And one of the things you want to notice is a lot of these genres are a little bit, my favorite word, mushy. That is, that something that's in one genre could also kind of fit into another genre. But each genre has kind of its own parameters or ideals. For documentary photography, and I'll go ahead and go to the first photo. In documentary photography, the photographer is really finding photographs in the world and trying to remain as much as possible truthful to what is actually there. So his first photograph is by a photographer, William Eggleston. He worked in color. He would really be just out on the street with a relatively small camera, just photographing what he saw in front of him, the color, the flavor, the feeling of the United States during that time, in the cities, in the suburbs. He had an incredible sense of composition and design, and also just a sense of the social fabric and the look and the feel and the culture of the times. This next photographer is Sebastião Salgado. He is what I would call a social documentary photographer. He's made a number of different series. He's still working today. This was a series that he did about labor. He went around the world and photographed different laborers, trying to draw attention to the conditions and the struggles and the lack of attention and honor that we give to laborers. He's also done series about famine and about struggle. This is a series he did in Africa. And by the way, Sebastião Salgado is quite a philanthropist. The majority of the money that he derives from making his photographs go into charity and go into funds which support the people that he documents. This is Alex Soth. Alex Soth is a contemporary kind of star documentary photographer. This particular photograph is from a series he made called Along the Mississippi. So, like many documentary photographers, he travels and he tries to document or to record the sense of the place and the culture that he visits. So there's a portrait from that series and also a landscape. The last one here is Rebecca Norris Webb. This is a project that she did called Dakota, which was a documentary project, personal documentary project about a journey that she took home to visit her family while her brother was dying. Okay, now in a completely different vein, let's look at fashion and glamour. Um, Really, if you're talking about fashion and glamour, you're talking about exactly the opposite of documentary, and it might help you to understand documentary better if you think about fashion and glamour. So, fashion and glamour is all about a fantasy. This is a photograph by Richard Avedon. He was a very well-known fashion photographer and portrait photographer, but mostly for his fashion in the 60s, 70s, 80s, up until the 2000s when he did pass away. He really kind of pioneered the idea of this simple studio fashion photograph where the attention is all on the model and the lights and the elegance. He also would go out of the studio and made a series of these very famous photographs of this beautiful fashion model with unfortunately shackled elephants. I don't think this kind of a photograph could be made today. It was very intense and kind of provocative even at the time. This is a contemporary fashion photographer who I really have gotten to like. This is Miles Aldrich. He always has these totally crazy pop-in colors and these kind of strange, surreal situations. Beautiful women who are eating chicken in a pink coat. Um, these really are great examples of how fun and imaginative and playful fashion photography could be, and how very, very far it is from documentary. This is all about making things up. This is Nick Knight, very famous studio fashion photographer, really probably influenced by Richard Avedon, but taking it a step farther. He plays with color, with motion, but again, back in that very elegant but very simple white studio background. The last of these fashion photographers is really one of my favorites. This is a British photographer, Ellen Rogers. These may look like vintage fine art, hand painted photos, but these are fashion photos. She made these 4 fashion spreads, and they have this wonderful vintage, playful look. Again, a total fantasy. Okay, product and still life. Really fun area, sometimes overlooked. It's probably, if you're interested in making a living in photography, you should focus your attention here. Still life photography is an art, but it is the art that you need to capture in order to do great product photography, and that is the heart of advertising. So the photograph you're looking at now looks very contemporary, but this was actually made by Irving Penn, who was a very famous photographer in I think back to the 50s, 60s, and into the 70s. He really pioneered the product shot, the beautiful, elegant, imaginative product shot. This, of course, is a photo of all sorts of different caviar, very imaginative, playful. Frozen foods were a very new deal in frozen fruits and vegetables in the 60s. And he did this wonderful take on this by taking it out of the package and photographing the actual blocks of frozen food. One of his more famous photographs and one of my favorites. This is David Bishop, who has just an incredible sense of light. And notice that, again, still life photographs, they have that relationship to fashion in there, giving you kind of an idealized fantasy world. This is Karen Alpert. I love her work. She does these very playful, colorful work. She also does fine art, which look a little bit like her product work. This is, of course, candy string in a colander. And here's a still life she did of candies. And this last one is Annie Martin, who has been a Bay Area photographer, worked with a number of different companies. She's now transferring to Germany, which is a very hot territory for still life. Very elegant, very spare, white backgrounds. This last one that I'm going to show you is just one of my favorite still life photographs ever. This beautiful nuance of very, very monochromatic tones, white on beige on white. Okay, portrait photography. It goes all the way from celebrity photography, which I'm going to start by showing you, to the portraits for weddings or individual events. So the first photographer I want to show you is long gone, but a very famous portrait photographer, again, from the 60s and 70s, Yusuf Karsh. That's the photographer. The subject here is a very young Muhammad Ali. Yusuf Karsh did these very simple, dramatic lighting in the studio with a dark background, and so that he would focus really entirely on the personality and the character and the drama of the individual. This is another one by Yusuf Karsh, Audrey Hepburn. Annie Leibovitz, one of the most famous portrait photographers. She also does fashion and some other areas. This was really one of the photographs that catapulted her to fame. This was on the cover of Rolling Stone in the early 80s. This is Yoko Ono and John Lennon, taken just a few days before John Lennon was assassinated. These days, she also does portraits of the royal family. Very different style than she had back in the Rolling Stone days, but very adept, very beautiful. This is Platon. Platon is a very interesting contemporary portrait photographer, often does celebrities mostly, And his look is very stark, usually just this straight on, just the head. This is Vladimir Putin, I believe taken before 2016. Interesting, very creepy, sinister shot. And this is another one of my favorite Platons. This is Prince. And last is Katie Granite. You might not love her work, it's a little bit different. She's a contemporary star. She's making photographs now for The New Yorker. She started out doing fine art portrait photography that's related to documentary. She traveled around in mostly in California and asked people on the streets to pose for her and made these portraits against very bright white backgrounds with this strong shadowing. Okay, architecture and landscape, another broad field, very important. Very famous traditional architectural photographer, Julius Schulman, one of the most famous of the century. He was making photographs in the 60s and into the 70s when architecture itself was really emerging, this kind of new angular, spacious architecture. So, again, architectural photography often as much about lifestyle and fantasy. This is Candida Hofer. She's a contemporary architectural photographer, and she travels all over the world and photographs these grand spaces in this very seemingly very simple, very symmetrical style. This is Edward Bertinsky, and he is a social documentary landscape photographer. Let's see if we can put that all together. He photographs all over the world. He often photographs, as you can see here, from a plane. Not always, but he photographs the way that humans have scarred, intervened, and interrupted the landscape. There's another Edward Bertinsky. And the last one is Richard Misrock, very, very famous, but happens to be a Bay Area photographer. Also does work on sometimes documentary on landscape. Fine art photography. Fine art photography can look like any other kind of photography. And the difference really with this genre is its intention. Fine art photographers are making work that is intended for exhibition, that is to go into galleries, to be sold individually, but also fine art photographers are not working for a client. They are making photographs which represent their own ideas, their own internal ideas of the world. This is Jerry Yulesman. Jerry Yulesman has been making photographs for several decades, still making them. He works entirely with film and he does darkroom composites. They're really amazing, surreal, fantastic. He has a big following. And if you, again, I'm showing such tiny amounts of each of these photographers. If you, Google or go to a library and look up any of these photographers, you're going to find a lot more of their work to look at. This is Lorna Simpson, very different kind of fine art photographer. She is conceptual. Her work, she actually now is working a little bit more with mixed media and painting, but her early work was all photography, sometimes Polaroids, accompanied by text. And it is all based on the experience of existing within a female African American body. Now, this next photographer is Gregory Crutzen. He's very, very famous now. He actually really pioneered this, what is really now a new genre of photography, which are these large-scale staged photos. So if you see Gregory Crutzen make a photo, it's more like a movie production. He has a lighting designer. He has somebody who operates the camera. He has actors. Everything is very, very meticulously staged. And so what he'll do is he'll make these grand productions, and then there is a very limited handful of photographs that are then produced. So very beautiful. His work is really about this kind of the angst of the suburban existence. He makes most of his early photographs. I don't know about now, but early on, most of his photographs were made in his hometown, with often with people that he knew. And the last one, this is Lori Nix, another contemporary fine art photographer. This is one of her earlier works for a series that I think was the thing that actually got her attention right away. She makes these little scenarios. She creates little dioramas with toys. This is a toy car against a postcard background, and then rephotographs it. This series was all about her life in the Midwest. More recently, things have gotten, she's still doing these dioramas, but she's creating a number of different kinds of scenes. And I wanted to share with you this really, really wonderful, fun, dramatic, intriguing cityscape. And that is it. I hope at least one or two of these photographers gets you excited. If there's any that you don't like, don't worry about it. This is just a way for you to start to get to know the world of photography and start thinking about who you might be as a photographer.